One other thing I think which Justice Martha Koome, if and when she becomes the president of the entire judiciary, the Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya, one of the things she'll be dealing with probably will be BBI, because I mean there are already cases that are live and active before the courts, but the thing is going on through Parliament, and who knows, it might still end up with a few cases coming out of that. And so today there's been not day-long conversation in Parliament, and I think we have some of the excerpts from members of Parliament, especially in the National Assembly, speaking about the BBI.
We were deceived, Mr. Speaker, that this was a process intended in achieving a different objective, but those who had ulterior motives, Mr. Speaker, wanted to amend the Constitution.
And therefore, one can correctly argue this bill does not meet the constitutional requirement. His Excellency the President and the Right Honorable Prime Minister, the owner of the handshake, they are not going to kill any of us if we correct this mistake on this bill.
A cabinet secretary being referred to as cabinet minister. These are not material. These are not material. They don't change the tenor of what Wajiko intended to say.
All right, I should say it's actually both houses of Parliament. There's still quite a few senators there. But the point that they were all talking about there is something that has been curiously contentious at this late stage in this game. Lina, probably I should start with you. This idea that somehow the members of Parliament believe they could change something. Obviously, there's been a lot of confusion about which document is which. I have understood from all the discussion that have been going on that the bill that the Senate is discussing is technically different from the one that the National Assembly is discussing. The one in the Senate has 6 typos. The one in the National Assembly has only 1. The one in the Senate is the actual one that was passed by 33 counties. The one in the National Assembly was passed by 11 counties. All of those notwithstanding, here it is, they're discussing it, and yet we still have this idea that they can actually amend. Okongo Mogeni there, the senator saying, from Nyamira, saying that, you know, they'll not kill us if we change something here.
Joe, you know, this broadcast today, we were switching between the BBI debates and the KEMSA hearings. Yeah. And one thing both sessions had in common is the futility of the
here we go.
of both exercises. Because to what end? Yeah. To what end? What is this discussion all about? This bill is a bill by popular initiative. And popular initiative means unless they change the law, and that will not happen before they before now.
The Constitution first.
Yes. And the popular initiative means you can't touch it. You really had 3 stages to either interfere or defeat the BBI bill. The first stage was the collection of signatures. 1 million signatures was the threshold before you take the bill to the IEBC. And then once IEBC approves, then it goes to the county governments, to the county assemblies rather. The second stage, if you had a problem with the BBI bill, would have been the counties, the county assemblies, deny them the 24, yeah, because they needed for it to move to the next stage, it needed to have gotten the approval of at least 24 counties. So that was stage 2. Now there's one last stage, and that is the referendum, where the bill is going to head presumptively as per the law as was written when it first went to the IEBC. That's the assumption, that you write it, collect the signatures, give it to IEBC, IEBC passes it on to the county assemblies return it to the houses of Parliament, that's the National Assembly and the Senate. They do what they are doing now, which is the talk and discuss about it. Whether they vote it down or vote for doesn't really matter, because it's a self-propelling process. The next stage is the referendum. So that's why I'm saying there was something similarly very, very futile about this.
There was something that I found extremely curious, and I get the feeling that it is something that is going to, and Yvonne, you come in a moment, that I think is going to be discussed for some time to come, because if you look at the discussions they've been having about all these things, the inconsistencies that they're talking about, and one of them has particular reference to Article 89 of the Constitution, because Article 89 basically talks a lot about the jurisdiction, as it were, that the Constitution gives the IEBC to do what they call boundary delimitation, and they basically determine where the boundaries are going to be. Yet there is this question of the 70 new constituencies that in the BBI bill are basically predetermined where they are going to fall, which would appear to conflict with the mandate that the current constitution gives the IEBC, and it's been the crux of the discussion why there is a difference of opinion in the JLAC, the committee that was looking at this, because they say one is that the bill that has gone to the Senate has a certain Article 87.7 which doesn't exist anywhere, and it probably referred to 89.7, which has to do with, the sort of progressive nature in which the IEBC will determine, that all these constituencies are equal in size and all of that. But more fundamentally is where they are amending 89.4 rather. Now, 89.4 is where they are talking about the time between the change of boundaries and when the election happens. So the idea is so that when they remove that, then they will not have this constraint that once you create the constituencies, you can't use them in the election, because the interest here seems to be that once you create the 70 constituencies, then they should matter next year in the election, because otherwise, why would they be doing it? But the complication that a lot of these people are raising is this, that in 89.2, which has not been amended, the IEBC is given express mandate by the current constitution, as it were. So for you to remove that, you really have to change that. But BBI is not seeking to amend this one, which says the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission shall review the names and boundaries of constituencies at intervals of not less than 8 years and not more than 12, but any review shall be completed at least 12 months before a general election. So what they've tried to do is that the schedule that you had them arguing back and forth about, that Schedule 2, is attempting to change this idea of the 12 months and everything else, but because it has not amended the substantive part, the 89.2, which gives the IEBC the mandate, that is why you are seeing some of the MPs there arguing that is it possible that there could be a conflict? And some people say, well, maybe this kind of thing is perhaps the reason why maybe this thing might end up in court somewhere and a real discussion might ensue.
Isn't 2 flowing into 4? So that if you're saying 2 talks about the period of boundaries delimitation, and 4 gives you further clarity in the event this happens within this period, what to do. So what basically the bill is saying is suspend these 4 so that the new constituencies that are being created apply for the election that will come in 2022.
That is true, but the lawyers there that were basically raising this not as loudly as they were in the committee were saying that they needed to have amended 2 to oust that jurisdiction of IEBC to determine the names and boundaries of all of these things, because they haven't changed that. So they're changing the one that flows from it, but they have not changed the substantive clause that gives the IEBC the mandate to determine those constituencies. And I think that is where the discussion is.
Yeah, the challenge, Joe, with that is creation and distribution of these new constituencies, the proposed 70 constituencies, is at the heart of the BBI process. It's actually one of the key selling points. And I dare say, particularly in the Mount Kenya region. Remember the one man, one vote, one shilling mantra? Part of it is to try and cure it through the creation of new constituencies. Because when you create new constituencies, you're talking about more resources, you're talking about even basic things like recruitment. It's at constituency level, so to say. So you're trying to cure it at that point. But now, at the heart of all this discourse that you see, both in Parliament and even at the committee level for the Joint Legal Affairs Committee, was creation of those constituencies and how they were distributed. 28 counties are proposed to benefit from the 70 new constituencies. That means a whole 19 counties do not get a constituency. But there's an explanation that is being given that when IIBRC, that was led by Andrew Ligale, was given an opportunity to create 80 new constituencies. You remember the departure from 210 to 290? There was gerrymandering, so that you don't want to leave it to a certain team to determine how the constituencies will be distributed, but make it a substantive matter in this process. And therein lies the problem, because there's some arguments that why did County A not get, yet County B got? And then there's a response to that is being given that look at the population and the quotas that were being set, that some certain current existing constituencies do not merit to be constituencies because probably they don't even have sufficient numbers. So at the heart of all this discourse that you see, first of all, is creation of those constituencies and how they are distributed, which is a very political process. And then when you suspend this article 89.4, what are you saying? If, for example, BBI passes, then and the constituencies are created and distributed as proposed in Schedule 2, can you conduct an election next year for the presidency without having created these 70 extra constituencies? Because the same constitution tells us the election of the president, of the governors, of the MCAs, of the MPs is conducted on the same day. So introduces quite some other aspects.
But guess what? The same constitution says that the IEBC has the mandate to create. So you may have conflicting jurisdictions, but what do I know? I am not a lawyer. So Yvonne, you had something to say about this.
You see, all this debate about amending it is for naught. Like, it's such a great, vibrant debate. But the truth of the matter is these MPs cannot amend this document. And whilst we're seeking to amend the Constitution, we currently have one in place, the Constitution of Kenya 2010, which states in Article 257 that Parliament's role is largely, is ceremonial the right word to use? Because,
conveyor belt,
yes,
more like.
Because it touches on Article 255, those amendments they're talking about. That means that then the President transmits it, Parliament transmits it to the President, and then he doesn't even assent to it, because that has to go through a referendum. So for me, it's just, did we not understand all of this? These are changes that should have been made at that point. Listen, constitution making, amending is tough enough without all of these very technical intricacies. By the way, there's a rumor that some people might be going to court to say that, in fact, this BBI did not meet the threshold of the 24 counties, depending on which bill you look at. Is it the one that got the 11, the one that got the 33? There are two of them. Which ones will be taken to the president? Which ones, then the president will take, what, 2 bills to the IBC? The IBC will then do what? Because remember, a referendum is about us voting on one constitution, and we're asked one question: do you agree with changes, yes or no? It's not a multiple choice question. So which bill is this that is going to be transmitted to the president and then on to the IBC and then on to the people? And I just want to say this, because Parliament was called for a special sitting to discuss, debate, and try to amend a document that they have no business doing because the law does not allow them to. Perhaps we could have recalled Parliament for a special sitting for something in which they could have passed and had an impact, like COVID-19, for instance.
Yeah, Joe, interestingly, whatever happens, it's a good discussion. And I think it's important for members to have their say. For as long as they can, let them have their say, so that we also get to hear what are their thoughts about certain proposals that are, I mean, there are 73 articles in the Constitution that are proposed for amendment. It is important to hear them and, you know, how they relate with the whole document. But the truth is, they will not change anything. They can't amend the document. What they can do is to wait for the document and convince the electorate to reject it at that level. Because the two opportunities that were there was, one, deny the process the sufficient signatures, which didn't happen. Deny the process sufficient county assemblies, which didn't happen. The National Assembly and the Senate, whether they approve the document or reject the document, doesn't matter. The people who will finally say whether the constitution will be changed or not are the Kenyan electorate, are the ballot. Unless the courts make a different ruling that stops the process, or maybe they find fault in the entire process and throw it away altogether. And I think part of what happened at the Joint Legal Affairs Committee and what is happening in the two chambers of Parliament is good fodder for content that will be once again prosecuted in the courts.
Linus, you're going to have the last word on this, because Francis is basically just saying yote tisa kumi ni kwamba Madam CJ, if and when she comes, iko kazi.
Sasa 11 is the issue of evolving political interests that are attending to this entire BBI debate. This is not strictly about the constitution alone. We have an election next year. There was the handshake of 2018, and there are interests that were generated by that, and expectations that were generated by that. When we see the likes of Senator James Orengo seeming to change his position, becoming the advocate of, yeah, you can actually change this through Parliament, then there's something we're not being told about the evolving nature of the politics behind BBI. And I'll leave it at that by just saying there's an election next year, and that could also be a factor in what we are seeing, the changing of positions, the shifting of goalposts. Let's discuss this, the 70 constituencies afresh. It wasn't an issue in Sagana, Francis, but now it's an issue. Why is it that suddenly a big issue that Nyeri was not allocated a county?
A constituency.
A constituency. These are the, what I would term the undercurrents, the political undercurrents, probably related to the election.
So changing goalposts and a lot of balls up in the air.